are watching CBS News continuing coverage of Showdown in the Gulf. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
The dimensions, the context of the Gulf War has changed quite a bit over the last few hours. The war goes on. Air attacks are underway in Iraq, in Kuwait. Heavier air attacks, if anything, and some new targets have been added to the list to be hit by U.S. warplanes and other allied planes in the wake of Saddam Hussein successfully lobbing Scud missiles into Israel. This hour, these are among the storylines and headlines. President Bush has reportedly told the Israelis that the United States is retaliating for the Iraqi missile attacks. U.S. Patriot missile, ground-to-air, successful in its first combat use in Saudi Arabia. Pentagon sources say a second U.S. warplane is lost. Only known U.S. casualty so far is identified. Israel radio says President Bush told Prime Minister Shamir that he has ordered new airstrikes in retaliation for Iraq's missile attacks this evening on Israel. These photographs in and around Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv and other cities, including Haifa, were hit by as many as 9 Scuds, we're now told. All of the Scuds apparently carrying conventional, not chemical warheads. 7 Israeli injuries reported and considerable damage, as you can see. The fact that the sirens alerted people to this incoming Scuds may have kept the number of casualties down. In Washington, Israel's ambassador to the United States said the attacks were unprovoked.
That, of course, Israel reserves the right to respond in any way it would deem fit, without going at the present time into particulars what the decision of the Israeli government in that respect will be.
A short time ago, we received first pictures of the deadly fireworks, spectacular air raid over and in Baghdad during last night's opening Allied air attacks. Bombs away, bombs explode, tracer bullets, anti-aircraft fire in response. They line up into the black night. Pentagon sources tell our David Martin that a second U.S. warplane may have been lost. That would make a total of 5 Allied planes down, 2 of those U.S. planes. The Pentagon tonight identified the only known U.S. casualty as U.S. Navy pilot Mike Spiker from the carrier Saratoga, officially listed as missing in action. A Scud missile heading for Saudi Arabia was downed by a U.S. Patriot ground-to-air missile. Watch this. The Scud was heading for the Dhahran Air Base, where the U.S. has a huge air installation. The Patriot fires, hits the Scud knocked out of the sky without damage. Those are among the storylines and headlines as we move into this half hour of coverage of events in the Middle East. Now, the most important 2-story developments of the night are those Scud missiles hitting Israel, with all the danger for widening the war and further complicating President Bush's strategy, the strategy being to hit Iraq and its forces in Kuwait with as much force as possible, the doctrine of overwhelming force, in hopes of getting the war over with very quickly. Saddam Hussein going through one full day when everyone, including this reporter, talked about the paucity of his response. Everybody was asking the question, where is he? Where is his response? Well, in a way, and a phrase used earlier on our broadcast, he was laying back in the weeds, waiting for the first wave of attacks to get through. Also, there's some indication that the first air attacks gave him complications and difficulties with communications. But now today, the second day of the war, he managed to get his mobile Scud missile launchers working, the ones that had survived the first air attacks. He hit Israel with, we're now told, 9 Scuds, fired at least one at Saudi Arabia, the one you saw knocked out of the sky by that Patriot missile, and there are unconfirmed reports of other Scuds fired at Saudi Arabia. We don't have confirmation of that, and if there were other Scuds fired, we don't know exactly where they were fired and what happened to them. All the while, U.S. and other allied force ground troops are maneuvering in the Saudi Arabian desert, ever closer to the Kuwaiti border, and expanding their movements ever farther westward in the desert. either to make it appear that the flanking movement may move further to the west, or indeed to give General Schwarzkopf, the overall Allied commander in the theater, the option of where he wants to make a flanking movement. U.S. congressional leaders were told today that the United States had no plan for making a direct frontal ground assault to liberate Kuwait. In the tradition of the United States Army, such head-on attacks went out of fashion no later than World War I, and that the U.S.-led forces intend some kind of flanking movement when and if they have to go in on the ground into Kuwait. They have the option of making flanking movements from the desert and or coming in with seaborne assault troops, a full Marine division at sea in the Persian Gulf, poised and ready to strike with amphibious assault if called upon to do so. Leslie Stahl is standing by now at the White House. Leslie?
Dan, it's been a very long, difficult, nerve-wracking night here at the White House. There have been high-level meetings going on ever since the first reports of attacks of the Scud missiles in Israel. The president had gone home by that time. He has been in the residence receiving reports all night long. They have just put out a statement the second of the night saying that Secretary of State Baker had been in touch with the Prime Minister of Israel, Shamir, to assure him that the United States was continuing its efforts, quote, to eliminate this threat. It appears that President Bush has been able to talk the Israelis out of retaliating. I don't know for sure that he himself ever got on the phone, but his administration has managed what many would consider astonishing, that the Israelis did not automatically send their fighters off in full force to strike back for this action. The United States has been in touch with other of the Arab allies in the coalition, but we don't know what that was about. We do know that the United States has assured the Israelis that we will do the retaliating, that it is underway. An astonishing night here at the White House. The president obviously concerned that if the Israelis did retaliate, the coalition would begin to crack and fall apart. It has not happened. I must tell you, Dan, that from my own perspective, it's been a roller coaster evening here at the White House, quite an experience of up and down emotions. I believe the high-level meetings are still going on in General Scowcroft's office, which is that big corner office. I know you're familiar with the National Security Advisor's office, the big corner one in the White House. Lights are still blazing. We're told the president is still at home, taking in information, continuing to get reports.
A reminder, Leslie, when it comes to war, what you least expect often happens, and what you most expect sometimes never occurs. David Martin is at the Pentagon with an updated report on exactly what happened with these Scud missile attacks. David?
Back over the sequence of events here, because I think it is really quite revealing of the amount of scrambling that went on tonight. You begin with the Iraqi launch of Scud missiles against Israel. Then Israeli radio announces that it is retaliating. Then the U.S. Central Command picks up on its radar Israeli warplanes heading in the direction of Iraq. Then the Secretary of State starts making phone calls. He calls the Israeli ambassador in Washington, and as Leslie just mentioned, he calls the Prime Minister of Israel. Then the attack, the Israeli retaliation for the Scud missile attack never materializes. The U.S. says it will take care of the retaliation. Now, that doesn't sound like some last-minute scrambling and some hectic phone calls in the middle of the night to get some Israeli warplanes recalled. I don't know what does.
Well, General Schwarzkopf, of course, is the President's National Security Council advisor. General Schwarzkopf, the U.S. commander in the theater of the war, the Persian Gulf. But General Schwarzkopf used the phrase in a recent interview with me, David, saying that it was necessary for him and he intended to stay up on the balls of his feet. Always good counsel when it comes to war, because again tonight we've had this reminder of how unpredictable things can get and how quickly once a war begins. Our CBS News coverage of the changing dynamics of this Persian Gulf War continues.
When I think of everything I put in my hair to make it shiny, more manageable, and all it took was a touch of VO5. Yeah, VO5.
VO5 hairdressing. A touch does so much.
Wow.
I just tried VO5 for the first time. Yeah, the stuff in the tube your old man used for control. The stuff that's been around forever. Now I know why.
VO5 hairdressing. A touch does so much.
I like it smooth. I like it slow. Taking our time, round and round we go. Don't ever change.
Seems as long as there's been slow dancing, there's been slow high.
After all these years, don't ever change. Don't ever change. 'Cause you know
The best things in life never change.
I like it slow.
If you think there's a longer lasting shine than tough acrylic future, think again. For long-lasting acrylic protection, nothing outshines future.
The same medicine found in the prescription drug Motrin.
The same medicine found in the prescription drug Motrin.
Same as in Motrin in non-prescription strength.
The same medicine found in the prescription drug.
Did you ever notice that a lot of pain relievers seem to be saying the same thing? Well, if you want the same medicine found in the prescription drug Motrin, wouldn't it just be simpler to ask for Motrin IB? Non-prescription strength Motrin IB. You can't buy a more effective pain reliever without a prescription. Motrin IB. Accept no alternatives.
New Alpine Lace American Slices.
Tastes so good.
Low cholesterol and 50% less sodium.
Tastes so good.
2/3 less saturated fat.
Healthy and tasty American. Tastes so good. Alpine Lace.
The wave of Iraqi missiles into Israel is complicating U.S. strategy in the Persian Gulf War. With that in mind, let's go to Tom Fenton in Tel Aviv for an update on the Scud missile attacks that hit Israel this evening. Tom?
Dan, the dawn has arrived and some of the fog of confusion of the night has lifted, and Israeli radio is now saying that no conventional weapons were used. None of the warheads that were fired at Israel were chemical or nerve gas. The total, according to Israeli radio, is 7 or 8 Scud missiles. And as for casualties, the only casualties they have are the 7 lightly injured that we reported earlier this evening. So it's a pretty small toll for a night of a rain of Scud missiles, presumably because the missiles themselves cannot be aimed. They just point them in the general direction. They did not land on buildings full of people, and also because the missiles do not carry a large warhead. To travel the distance from Iraq, carry enough fuel, they have to have a small warhead. So, presuming no chemical weapons were fired against Israel, according to Israeli radio, there were 7 or 8 Scud missiles, all with high explosives, and the only casualties reported so far are 7 lightly injured. There was a lot of property damage, but that is far less serious. Dan?
And impressive so far, the Israelis' restraint. As Leslie Stahl was saying earlier, it's impressive that President Bush and Secretary of State Baker, General Skokov, and others have been able to convince the Israelis, to persuade the Israelis that they should stay out of the war as long as possible. While complimenting that, compliments beginning to build for the Israelis' restraint that even in the face of this Scud missile attack tonight, they have not, at least not yet, retaliated themselves. President Bush saying that he is in the process of having U.S. and other allied forces retaliate for the Israelis. As the war goes on, these headlines: U.S. retaliates for the attack on Israel. President Bush orders the attacks. No chemical warheads. The Israeli officials say the missiles had conventional warheads only. President Bush's Gulf policy gained support. According to the latest CBS News New York Times poll, it was taken before tonight's events. President Bush was described as, quote, outraged by Iraq's missile attacks on civilian populations in Israel, and President Bush has responded, reportedly ordering a whole new wave of fresh strikes against Iraqi targets. Tonight, another wave of American warplanes reported headed toward Iraq and or Kuwait. In Israel, few casualties from the Iraqi offensive, and all of the casualties, rather miraculously, when you see how much damage was there from these pictures, all of the casualties said involved minor injuries. Israeli officials say the Scud missiles did not have any chemical warheads. Iraq also apparently fired at least one Scud missile into Saudi Arabia. That missile shot down by an American ground-to-air Patriot missile. It's the first time the Patriot has been used in actual combat. And the new CBS News New York Times poll taken today, 406 adults asked, do you approve of the way President Bush is handling Iraq's invasion of Kuwait? 85% now say yes. That's dramatically up. 12% said no. Now, when the same people were questioned in January, 57% said yes and 35% said no. That's the way polls go. We pointed out earlier this follows a pattern that when U.S. forces actually go into combat, the president's approval ratings generally shoot up dramatically immediately, and then depending on how things go, the later polls can show public opinion holding steady behind the president or diminishing. Let's go now to Bob Schieffer with General George Christ. Bob, we've been trying to stay up with, among other things, the developments of concerning a possible land offensive. But if best you can, you and the general bring us up to date on what you think we need to know.
Well, I think one thing we might confirm, Dan, is that indeed the retaliation that the president had ordered does seem to be underway. Just a short time ago, the general and I saw pictures coming in from our cameras in Saudi Arabia showing F-16s heading north. We thought that's what we were seeing. Now people on the ground there are telling us that indeed that those were the F-16s. So that attack is apparently underway. We heard through the day the pilots who took part in those first raids last night, Dan, talking about, what did they describe it, General, like the 4th of July, the greatest 4th of July celebration kind of scene, if spectacular is the way to describe things that happen in war.
Look at that big mushroom tower. That's burst of flames at the bottom of the TV tower is one of our missiles, our smart bombs, coming in and hitting it.
But, General, it does not appear from what we can see, and you and I have looked at these pictures now to try to analyze them in some way, we're not seeing anything else coming from the sky, and the tracer bullets we see going up, those are not missiles, are they?
No, these are anywhere from 57 to 122 millimeter guns that are going up. You'll see one, a close-up of a, right there, that's about a 85 millimeter manned gun. It's all optical, no radar with the thing at all.
Now, when you see these lights going up, they seem to be sort of trailing off. That is just, are they going off into the distance, or are they going awry?
That's right. These are tracers that the gunners are using to try to sight their guns, and they follow the tracer. As it gets up to altitude, they just slowly begin to fall.
These would not pose a danger, as spectacular as they are, I guess.
Oh, indeed. Everything that goes up comes down. Now, there's something coming in. You see that?
Yes.
Right there. That's incoming. I can't tell if it's from a missile coming down or something of ours coming across, but it looks like something coming in from the air.
Would this would be about as tough as it gets for a pilot, I would think, when you go up against something like this.
Well, the guns at night aren't very accurate. It's the daytime when you worry about the guns. At night, it's the radar control and the missiles that have to worry about. You can see more streamers of them coming up. A lot of these guys are shooting into the air. They're not quite too sure what they're shooting after the shooting, Bob.
Now, David Martin talked a minute ago, General, about we've now lost how many planes?
I think we've lost about, 5 total aircraft.
We must have had at least, 2,000 sorties by now. If indeed those figures are accurate, that's a very low casualty rate, isn't it?
There's sort of a rule of thumb, Bob, that says about 3% per total sortie. So this morning we had 1,000 sorties. I guess that would be 30 aircraft. We're probably up to 2,000 by now. That should be 60. And look what's happening. Nothing near the kinds of casualties. Remarkably low.
And now we're told we saw F-16s taking off from Saudi Arabia. There is another wave of attacks underway. I think one of the things we have not talked about very much, General, through the day, because of this news about the Scuds from Israel has been so overwhelming. If indeed President Bush decides to order an attack on the ground, it will be just as overwhelming, will it not, as what we've been seeing in the air war?
Absolutely. It's going to be a massive attack on narrow fronts. Lots of tanks going in. Very, very heavy. Armor on the ground, lots of artillery, and in air supporting them. So it's just going to be just as violent as what we're seeing here in the air.
General Chris, Dan, back to you.
Thanks, Bob. Ed Bradley, we haven't heard a great deal from the Egyptians or the Algerians There are other Arab capitals, for that matter, the Syrians.
as
You
well,
talk
yeah.
about low profile. They have really kept a low profile on this so far.
Yeah, I think everybody. We haven't heard that much from any of the Arabs or from any of our Western allies who have all sat down, joined hands with the United States, and allowed the United States to very much take the lead and follow in our footsteps. The British have sent in planes and have been active in the air war. But I think it's very interesting, particularly with Israel here too, and I don't want to overemphasize this. I don't think you can overemphasize this, that Israel has not retaliated. I mean, I looked at the language from the ambassador said early on, and he said that we reserve the right. When the time comes, I think we'll do what we have to do. He said when the time comes. But they've made it very clear that David Martin was talking about the phone calls earlier today, that this is very much a United States action. President Bush and Secretary of State James Baker did a wonderful diplomatic feat in pulling this coalition together and holding it together and getting everyone to cooperate. And I think they're being very patient and trying to make this thing work. I don't think anybody wants it to come apart, because I think it's almost, it can be like a house of cards. If one falls, it will all start to tumble. But I think that they're all being very patient, because I think they realize that it's in their best interest to let the United States get out front. And if the United States is going to be out front, we're going to call the shots. And they will follow in our footsteps and do what we want to do at this particular point.
Kind of Chung, those poll results of the new CBS News New York Times poll, which were taken before tonight's events, we have to keep emphasizing, showing this great jump in support for President Bush. While perhaps no one wants to talk about it, this unintended, maybe, helps the president in another way. The economic situation has been unstudied for quite some time. Now, in news of today, the stock market shot up, second biggest day in terms of increase on Wall Street in history, and the oil prices went way down, and if today's trend continues, may go down even further. All of that good news for the president on his party's political front, and in terms of tamping down what was growing public concern about the economy, at least for a short time.
Yes, I'm glad that you brought up the oil situation, because in fact, the people that we polled were asked why we are there and if they support it. And actually, it's not clear. The greatest numbers of people said that we were there, we were engaging in this action to stop Iraq from attacking Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries. Second answer was to restore the government of Kuwait, and the third answer was to protect the supply of oil to the United States. That was the main reason. But third, whereas 10 days ago it was twice that number that the Americans thought that was the reason why we were there. But listen to this. When it comes to whether or not they support it, they said it didn't matter what the reason was. They supported 73%. So it's apparently not clear to Americans precisely the reason, but the rally around the president way of thinking occurs right now, and that is that they support.
Our CBS News coverage continues. We need to take that short break for taking care of business with our local stations, of course. It's pretty well known by now. I'm not much a believer in public opinion polls, but anyway you cut it, the results of this poll tonight must be encouraging to President Bush, and I think we can expect tomorrow to hear some, and perhaps even some will be justified, people who say, well, you see, we told you, you were overplaying those pictures of people who are opposed to the president's policy.
No question about it. I mean, here we're talking about a little more than 400 people who we had interviewed 10 days ago, and we re-interviewed them today. And bear in mind, we've been trying to emphasize that these results reflect their opinions and thoughts before the Iraqi attack on Israel. So we have to keep that in mind. Fact is, the president's approval rating has just jumped tremendously. His job rating gone up to 86% from 10 days ago, 64%. People are also watching all the events on television. We happen to notice that as well, that they're getting all their information, the majority of their information from television. They're watching this event very closely.
Ed Bradley, one of the things that has yet to materialize, which doesn't say that it isn't going to materialize is the worldwide terrorism offensive that Saddam Hussein had threatened that he would fuel if he were attacked. Now, there were some scattered reports, I think 6 or 7, of anti-American acts of violence of one kind or another around the world, but so far, the terrorism phase of his counterattack has not developed.
And you have to hope that it won't develop. I mean, you wonder how much of what he has said is rhetoric, particularly when you look at the defenses that he's put up against American air attacks. How much of what he says is rhetoric? But we do know that there were a number of major terrorist figures, heads of terrorist organizations, who were in Baghdad meeting with, we presume, with Saddam Hussein prior to the start of this war. So what were their marching orders, if any? Where are their people? Are they in place? Will they strike if they are in place? And we've seen over the years in Paris with the Pan Am flight, in Rome at the airport, in Japan before, in Germany, there have been any number of incidents where terrorists are able to strike, and these terrorist networks are in place. So they're out there. And I think we kid ourselves if we think that we're not vulnerable in some way.
That's a point that Rita Braber was underscoring in her report earlier in the day about this, that terrorists are patient. Very patient. They wait for their opportunity. As we found out with the tragedy of Pan Am Flight 103, that the Iranians wanted to respond to what the shooting down of their airliner. They waited their time, they picked their place, and then struck with devastating and tragic efficiency.
And a terrorist often cultivates a relationship with an innocent person. That person will then become the mule, the person who will carry the explosives unknowingly. There was an incident with the Israelis caught a woman who was pregnant, who was going, I think, to Rome to stay at a hotel. Right. She was traveling by herself. She was 7 months pregnant. That struck a red flag popped up. And then they said, well, she's going to Rome. She's going to stay at a hotel that was frequented by business travelers. It's not some place that you'd go for, a nice little holiday. It's business travelers. Why is she going there? So they searched her luggage and found 10 pounds of plastic explosives in there. So that the terrorists will cultivate that kind of relationship with someone who's an innocent victim. And when the time is right, then they pull the trigger and move them out.
Dan, in our poll, we asked these people that we interviewed, how likely do they believe that a major terrorist attack would occur in the United States, and 30% said very likely, and 53% said somewhat likely. If you combine those two figures, fully 83%. There's some fright out there among our citizens. But if you talk to terrorist experts, they make it very clear that the likelihood of something happening in the United States is really slim.
Real slim.
Yes.
Well, let us hope that turns out to be the case. I think that one of the things that we're short on in our reporting, it strikes me, Ed and Connie, is the consequences, the reverberations, the echoes of this war in the Persian Gulf are going to be many, varied, unpredictable, and very long-lasting. This is the first major crisis of the post-Cold War era. However it turns out, the consequences are going to be very far-reaching for this country, for world peace, and for the economy. And such things as the future of terrorism and what the terrorists do, even if the United States victory is complete and let us hope and pray will be very quickly done, the potential for these terrorist acts cannot be overstated at the moment.
We don't have crystal balls. We can't see which way it's going to go. So I think you're right. It can go in any direction.
Our CBS News coverage of the war in the Persian Gulf continues.
This is CBS.
I see you've selected the ultimate adventure. Vehicle preference?
Toyota 4x4, the black one.
Excellent choice. Oh no, we've lost another one.
A 1991 Toyota 4x4, the ultimate adventure.
Nobody beats Home Depot. Nobody.
Home Depot will beat any price, any store, any identical item, any day. And low prices are just the beginning. Home Depot carries a beautiful selection of Aqualine kitchen and bath faucets to fit any decor. We also feature self-cleaning Craftmaster water heaters by Moorflow.
When you're with us at Home Depot, you feel right at home.
You are watching CBS News' continuing coverage of Showdown in the Gulf. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
The latest headlines in our continuing Gulf War coverage. More U.S. F-16s head for Iraq to retaliate for missile hits on Israel. No reported Israeli retaliation as yet. The Israelis say they maintain their right to do so sometime in the future. A key U.S. weapon passes its first test in combat. A second U.S. warplane may be lost. A new CBS News New York Times poll indicates Americans back their president. President Bush ordered the new air attacks to retaliate for the earlier Iraqi Scud missile attacks on Israel. This was the scene and the sounds of Israel as a Scud missile hit. Perhaps you saw it striking in the distance on that videotape. Some 30 persons were taken to hospitals, but only 7 of them are officially listed as wounded. No deaths, as many as 9 of the Scuds hit. 9